Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. You know, at any stage in your life, it's possible to make changes. Life is ever changing. They even say that we reevaluate our lives every 5 years. And with that comes new goals, whether it's your career, whether it's your relationships. And sometimes you can't do that alone. Sometimes you need somebody to walk you through that. And I found that somebody. She is somebody that works with all types of people, from couples to one-on-one with individuals, divorced parents, and more. And she's with us today. We're going to talk about a lot in terms of your mental health and achieving your goals. Dr. Gloria Vanderhorst is with us. She's a licensed psychologist. Gloria, welcome. How are you?
I am good today, Steve. Thank you for having me. This will be delightful.
So great to have you here, and so important in that there is, if you do the searches, there's a mental health crisis going on in our country right now.
True.
You know, the biggest demographic is teenage girls. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of stuff. What are you hearing most often, Gloria, when you talk with somebody, initially? What are most people struggling with right now?
Well, if you're looking at the crisis for teenagers, the struggle really is isolation. The pandemic, staying home, not having the ability to interact with peers has been devastating for females. Females, probably more than males, shape their personality and their character by mimicking their friends. So their friendships through middle school and high school will be shifting with some frequency. Maybe you'll find a best friend that you kind of hang on to throughout middle school and high school, but you're going to have conflicts with that person. There are going to be weeks where you're not speaking to each other. You're going to test out other people. You're going to try on the personalities of different people. And so with the pandemic, you're home. There's no one that you get to bounce yourself off of. There's nobody that you get to imitate. And it was devastating for females. Boys can entertain themselves more physically, and girls entertain themselves socially. So it's not hitting the boys as hard. They're still impacted. But teenage girls have really been undermined by the isolation and the lack of social contact.
You nailed it right there, Gloria. And in my research and my view of many different things, we always look at, teens forever, teen girls especially. It's teen girl drama. Here we go again.
Right.
But it's way, way more than that. That's always been around. But now you had social media and everything else that they may be going through. And interestingly, I also read that younger guys, like in their low to mid-20s, are extremely isolated, and you would think it would be the complete opposite of that.
Well, if you think about, you've gone through college, you've just started a new job, and so you're socially isolated almost immediately because you're not walking on campus, you're not hanging out in the student union, you're going to work, and you're going to work by yourself. Chances are none of your buddies got a job in the same place. Now, a few people will get lucky, and places like banks will take in a group of college students and run them through a 6-month class. And so that's a gorgeous transition from college to the workplace. But most of the time, you're getting hired as a single guy. You're going into a group of people that have been working there. There are not a dozen of your peers getting a job at the same level. And so you are already isolated for those 8 hours a day. And you want to succeed, all right? So you're putting in some time and energy outside of that work in order to make yourself stand out, in order to learn a new system. And so the normal social interaction takes place on the weekend, right? So you'll get together to play baseball, soccer, hockey, do the physical things that you used to do when you were hanging out with your guy friends on campus, but it isn't enough. So you're on a starvation diet socially, and you have a choice. You either identify that for yourself, and a lot of guys don't even recognize that that's what's happening to them, and so they can't do anything to intervene or correct it. And those that do recognize it have very limited options for intervention because the same thing is happening to their peers. And a lot of their friends have taken jobs in distant locations, right? So maybe they've gone back to their hometown or their home state. They didn't take a job in the college town where they graduated. They've spread out all over the United States. So there is isolation for guys as well.
I love your insight. You go deep, but you have a great view of the landscape, even in just what we're talking about right now. And isn't it interesting, and maybe it's kind of rhetorical, but social media, so great. We reconnect, but at the same time, it's so harming in many different ways, right?
Right. It is definitely isolating. I mean, the funniest thing is to go to places where teenagers hang out, right? Put your head into a Starbucks or a mall, right? And you will see two girls sitting next to each other, phone in hand, and they are texting like crazy. They are texting each other. They're sitting right next to each other. There's not a word that goes back and forth between them. It's all happening on that device. Mm-hmm. It's crazy making, right? Because we don't get the richness of communication when we're texting someone. I miss the facial expression. I'm not looking at you. I miss the body posture. I miss the intonation. I miss, the movement of the head, the flip of the hair. All of those things communicate more than the language. More than 90% of communication is based on nonverbals. So think about it. You're texting, she's texting, you're getting about 5% of the richness of communication, and you're missing all the rest of it. So, no wonder kids who even have a very active social life through media still experience themselves as kind of flat or depressed or, just not satisfied. It's because they're missing the nonverbal connection that is vital to all human beings.
Mm. And as the parent of a teenage girl and boy, but we're talking girls specifically at this moment, they'll even just text. That's not even text. They'll snap on Snapchat a picture. And it could be a picture.
An emoji.
If you're lucky, it's more of a, it's a snap of the top of your hair and the ceiling, or it could be, 1/4 of your shoe, or it could be, and that's it. And I've done that back and forth, with my daughter.
Think of that. When you were growing up, you had no opportunity to send somebody 1/4 of your shoe.
Yeah.
And now you do.
Yeah. In fact, I'm so ridiculous that right now I have it in my hand and I'm snapping half of my mouth in this microphone, and I now just sent that to my daughter, and there we go. Not even kidding. But yeah, it's crazy how the word social, it's almost like, hey, anti-social media. It's really what it is in a lot of ways.
It is. It does isolate. There's no doubt about it. So, parents who put limits on the use of it are doing the right thing, even though it's very hard. I remember I had an adolescent girl in my practice, and her parents were incredibly rigid about the phone. when she came in from school, the phone actually went into a lockbox. I mean, that's extreme. It isn't just, put it down here on the counter and leave it alone. We are locking this up for the next 2 hours because you're going to socialize with us and do your homework.
Yeah.
So that led to a lot of intense emotion in the family system. A little bit extreme, lots of tension.
Yes, and you need to start it early. Because if you drop the hammer when your teens are, say, 14, whatever, pick any age there,
right,
not going to be easy. It's got to be.
No, if you think about it, we plug kids in from infancy forward.
So true.
There's a device for toddlers.
Yeah.
And we sit them in front of the television, but we now give them their own little screen. So they're used to, comfortable with, attached to these little devices from 3 years forward. So if you don't put limits on when it can be used, how long it can be used, these are addictive. It's like crack.
Yeah.
They're truly addicted.
Yeah. And there's not too much you can do about it instead of locking it down. And by the way, side note for parents, I'm pretty geeky. There are no effective filters out there.
Right.
There aren't. You can filter out certain material and things like that. But when it comes to really locking that phone down, I don't care if it's the carrier, your cell carrier offering it, third party. I've tried them all. And I even have a friend who works for IBM. And I said, listen, you design programs, you do all of this. What are you using? Because I've tried all of them. I've paid for them. I've dealt with the tech support. And there's loopholes kids can figure out, especially Apple devices getting around it and everything.
Right.
I'm like, hey, man, what do you use? You know what he told me? He goes, I talk to my kids. He goes, nothing works. Nothing works. So don't waste your money. I'm sorry, but that's, unless there's something new that popped up in the last year or so, it is not, shall we say, foolproof. Your kids will figure out a way around it.
What does work is engaging your kids.
Yeah.
Right? So if they are not engaged, they are going to use that device. They're going to use the device to entertain themselves. They're going to use the device to connect with their peers. They're going to use the device to develop videos and some pretty ugly things to people they're irritated with at the time and regret it later. But you can engage your children. You have to be intentional about saying, I want to take a walk with you. I want to play a game with you. When my daughter was a teenager, we had this habit on Fridays of going out for frozen yogurt, which was very popular at the time. Right? And we would go out, we'd get frozen yogurt, we'd sit there and we'd chat and we'd talk in the car, which is also very important. All right? Car time with a teenager is golden because they will talk more if they're not looking at you. So with everybody facing forward, you're going to get a lot more engagement. But, okay, so we did frozen yogurt. And then sometime in college, we're at an event. This comes up that, as a teenager, we did this frozen yogurt. And one of the mothers commented to my daughter, she said, you must have really liked frozen yogurt. And my daughter said, I didn't like frozen yogurt at all. I liked time with my mom.
Wow.
That's the key.
That's a win.
That's the key. Yep. You find a ritual, right, that is important enough to you that you're going to stick with it, and your son or your daughter is going to connect with it and appreciate it. A ritual of any kind. It can be walking the dog, right?
Yeah.
You always come with me to walk the dog. You're both facing forward. You're not really facing each other. Much more conversation with a teenager takes place when you're not facing each other. They don't like to read your body language and facial expression because, as I said earlier, 90% of communication is nonverbal. All right? So they don't want your opinions emanating from your body. They want to be with you. They want your wisdom. They want your humor, but they don't want your judgment.
Yeah, and that's a delicate blend, and I think even a parental skill, And then you're also balancing that with you want to be their parent, but you also sort of want to be their friend. Not too far on the friend side there. You know what? We went down the road of kids and teens. While we're there, how about we talk about some of the counseling you do for divorced parents and divorced families?
That's the most difficult process for children, right? So when you come into a family, you expect to be loved by a system. You don't expect to end up moving back and forth between two different houses.
Yep.
And if you just stop to think about it, right? If you had to pack even a small duffel, right, and move to a different place next week and then back to the first place the week after that, if you were moving back and forth like we have children move back and forth between divorced parents, you would be exhausted, you would be frustrated, you would be irritated. I don't think anyone would ever elect to have that kind of living arrangement.
And
we have treat it as normal for these kids.
Yeah, and there's no way around it, and even more so if it's a situation where I don't want to say that it's better if kids witness their parents not getting along, but when it's a surprise, when one parent just decides to pull a trigger, and now you go from bliss to hell.
Well, if you're the kid, it's hell.
Well, yeah.
Sure. So no one. How about once in a while, at the beginning of a divorce system, I've been able to help parents see how important it is for the children to stay in the house and not have to move back and forth, and mom and dad move in and out for a significant period of time while the kids adjust to this reality that mom and dad are not going to be living with each other. So I got to ask you, why not make that the norm? Why does the child have to move back and forth? Why don't we make the parents move back and forth?
How do you view that? Tell me how you view that. How is that even possible? Or are you being facetious? I don't know.
It might seem a bit bizarre, right? But if you were really focusing on the stability of the children, you would not having them pack their bags, carry their hockey gear, grab their tennis rackets, and move themselves back and forth. You would have mom and dad have a place, right, where one can shuttle away while the other one shuttles in. Now, I know everybody's going to scream and say that sounds crazy.
I know where you're going with this, Gloria, and I'm going to, if I may, just jump in here and say it's called nesting.
Yes, it is.
And guess what? I did it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I love you.
I lived the life and still continue to. But it was for a period of maybe I want to say 6 months before house was sold. But that's what was done. It was 1 week parent in, the other week the parent out, back and forth. And I gotta say it wasn't fun for the parents, but it's not fun for the parents. But it's also not fun for kids who have to move back and forth.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so congratulations, right? Because that adjustment period, I think, is really critical for kids to get used to this concept that my parents will not be sharing a home with me anymore. So I'm glad to hear that you did the nesting. That's exactly what it's called.
Yep. It was kind of like the springboard to what's to come.
Right.
So it kind of got you used to, a dynamic difference. We'll call it that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you work with those parents, is it, divorced parents? Because I know we, work with couples. We just happen to center on kids just organically here today. Is it the parents? Do you work with them together? What if they're not on the same page? Where there's some challenges? Would it be done individually, or do you recommend not doing that?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, right? Because the reason that they're not continuing the marriage relationship is that they have some significant differences.
Sure.
And it doesn't make any difference kind of what category those fall in, but they've come to the conclusion that the differences are significant enough that they cannot continue a relationship that's an intimate relationship with each other. And so you do work as a parent coordinator. You work with the parents. I typically do not see the children, though in a few situations I have definitely seen the children, because the children need to be able to set some clear boundaries for themselves so that they're not the carriers of communication for the parents. The parents have to find a different way to establish communication with each other and not make the kids the traveler of information. But typically you work with the parents to facilitate a system where they can come to an agreement that this is how they will function in transitions. And I typically go through a regimen of what are you supposed to do at transitions. All right. For little kids, you're supposed to tell a little story about what they were experiencing at mom's house or dad's house and allow them to kind of take off on their own in any way they want, but you're to finish the story so that the parent gets that information and make that contact with the child. Daddy told me or Mama told me that, you went to the zoo and you saw the monkeys or whatever, all right? There's a transition story that goes with younger kids. And as they get older, I actually have them send an email prior to the transition so that the receiving parent has some basic information of what was happening during this 2-day, 3-day, 5-day period that the child was with me, so that there can be follow-up on items that are really critical and important. He's preparing for his chemistry exam, and he's gone through 3 chapters. He needs to do 2 more before Tuesday, those kinds of things, so that the parent who's receiving is clearly informed of what's been happening for their son or daughter, and they can kind of pick up immediately and not have to question the child about, where are you with this, what's happening with this. Questions are threatening. Do you know that questions are threatening?
You're asking me, do I know which questions?
Yes. No, any question. Do you realize that every question is threatening? Think about it. Let's say that you're walking down the street, someone coming towards you stops you and says, do you know what time it is? And just for a second, all right, you kind of catch your breath, you kind of raise your shoulders up, you look at your watch if you wear one, or you pull out your phone so that you can give them the accurate information of here's the time. That's a very simple example, but every question is somehow threatening to a human being. So you want to try to eliminate questions in interaction with your children, particularly at transition time, So if I get the email ahead of time, I have really good information that I can use to engage my child by just kind of telling the story, right? Dad told me you're working on your science project and that it's almost finished and it looks really great. Tell me more about it. So you eliminate questions because questions are threatening.
Never thought about that, but I can totally see, where our subconscious is programmed to protect us. And
right.
You're not going to answer a question unless you feel comfortable. So for that split second, you need to process. Even the stranger on the street, what time is it? Your immediate primal instinct is, why are they asking me? What do they want to know?
That's right. Why'd they pick on me?
Right. And are they asking to diffuse me because they're going to harm me? What is going on? Quickly. And then you assess the situation, and then it's like, it's just
my tie crooked? Is that why he picked on me?
Right. Or, hey, it's just a regular dude walking down the street asking what time it is because his phone is not charging, doesn't have a watch. Speaking of the time, we're out of it, and
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, same. So refreshing to talk with you, Gloria. Best way if you are a parent or an individual or anybody that wants to talk with a psychologist and really unpack things and move their life forward and potentially heal. Best way is your website?
That's right.
And that's your name, Dr. Dr. So it's DrVanderHorst.com. Dr. Vanderhorst.
That's right. www.drvanderhorst.com.
Got it. Gloria, fantastic talking with you today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Fun to talk with you too, Steve.
Yep. I look forward next time we get a chance to get together.
All right.
We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
This is you over 30 years ago.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And this is your mom when you drive her back from therapy.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Roles change without us noticing, and in your new role, we help you help. AARP gives you the information to help care for your mom so that you can have patience with her, just like she did with you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving or call 1-877-333-5885 to get practical health and wellness tips to provide even better care for your loved one.
Are we there yet?
Remember, visit aarp.org/caregiving. AARP, we help you help. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.